I wanted to share a couple of quick exercises that I use to increase my disc space as well as shift some of that disc bulge back inside. But before we jump to the exercises, I would like to stress the importance of disc healing in disc recovery. And while exercises help you fix or correct the shape of the disc, it's truly the body's healing capabilities help you retain that shape over a longer period of time. Now, the disc healing in general is an extremely poor and an inefficient process. And the reason for that is only the outer layer of the annulus fibrosus that's closer to the nerves get the required amount of blood supply or nutrients. The inner layers of the annulus fibrosus lack that. As a result, the healing is extremely poor. Now, however, there are a few things that you can do to stimulate or influence the activity of disc materials inside. And I would like to share a few things that truly benefited me in my path to recovery. So before we jump to the exercises, let's look at what those things are. So the first element that I would like to talk about is natural amethyst. So there's plenty of research and studies online about the deep penetrating infrared effects of natural amethyst, as well as the potential influence of neurosignals between the brain and the body. However, that topic is beyond the scope of this discussion, but I would highly encourage you to go online and read some of the properties, some of the infrared properties of natural amethyst. But if I had to summarize all of what I read, typically you're talking about creating an infrared influence utilizing some of the amethyst stone properties. And this is not the electrical infrared device, this is the natural amethyst stone, which has a deep penetrating neurological infrared influence. And again, I would highly encourage you to read and take a look at the studies published on this, on the properties of this stone. So that's the first one. The second one is magnetic field, and this is again not the electromagnetic device that are commercially available. These are magnetic stones, which placing a couple of stones between the affected area to influence or create a magnetic field through the tissue. So it works something like this. So the central idea is really to create a magnetic field that across the tissue so that you have a different kind of stimulation. So the first one is really the infrared type of a stimulation that you're trying to create with the magnetic field is a magnetic field influence that you're trying to create. The third one is a variable frequency pulsator, and this works more on the muscular components. So for example, when you have a disc injury, it's typically accompanied by a muscle spasm. And when you have a muscle spasm, some of the back core muscles get into spasm and then they get stiff. So in order to ease some of that tension, a variable frequency source or a variable frequency pulsator or pulsations can help ease some of that spasm, so that there's better possibilities of the other sources having a more pronounced and a more effective influence on the tissue material. Again, why would you want a variable? Your body tends to get used to any one type of stimulation. So when you have a variable source, it just gives you, a different pattern each time, so your body is more receptive to the changing frequencies. Again, I don't believe any of these heal your body by themselves. It's really the body that heals itself. The idea behind using these type of elements is just to stimulate or influence the disc activity so that your body reacts to that influence and heals itself. So you can either find these sources individually, or in my case, I got all of these together in a belt form from Amazon. However, where you get it from or what brand, it really does not matter. As long as you get the right kind of stimulation that works for your body is what really counts. In my case, the exercises along with these sources worked perfect in my recovery process. So having shared all of this stuff, now let's move on to the fun part, which is the exercises. To perform these exercises, I'm going to be using an inversion table, and this can be found at Amazon, eBay, or any local sports goods store. The brand does not matter. As long as you get something that fits your budget and has good reviews, it works just fine. One thing to point out, I got the one that inverts a full 90 degrees just so that I get maximum gravitational force and stretch on the spine. Now typically you would be using the inversion table with your back resting on the tabletop, but for the purposes of this exercise, I'm actually going to reverse this position and rest with my chest facing the tabletop. And I'll explain the reason why I'm doing it this way. So for the first exercise, I'm going to lie with my chest facing the tabletop and invert myself to an angle slightly lesser than 90 degrees. I lock myself in this position for a few seconds to create a nice, good stretch and a tension in my back and prep myself for the next position, which is the 90 degrees. I then release the lock and invert myself to a full 90 degree position, engaging the lock and then placing my hands behind my neck. As part of this exercise, I'm going to maintain this position anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes using natural gravity to create a nice good stretch in my spine, creating room so my intervertebral discs can naturally gravitate towards the center of the spine. If you're just starting off with this exercise, I would highly recommend start off with a lower angle and a fewer minutes and then work yourself up as you feel more comfortable or gain more strength. So the next part of the exercise is the inverted hyperextension or gyroids method. It has a couple of variations which are quite similar, but there are a few key differences. Let's look at the first variation. In the inverted position, with your hands still behind your head, you start performing an hyperextension. I normally do 3 sets of 12 repetitions each in a 5-minute session. In this exercise, you're stretching the spine, increasing intervertebral disc space, as well as trying to push some of that disc bulge towards the center of your spine. Now let's look at the second variation of the gyroids method. This exercise is similar to the Mackenzie method, except that here you're inverted, so you're stretching the spine and creating more room for the disc material to gravitate towards the center of your spine. A couple of key differences between the first and second variation is that in the second variation you have a more aggressive hyperextension, whereas in the first variation you're working more on your lower back muscles. I generally like alternating between the two variations. If you want to further intensify your hyperextension, you can do so by performing this stretch. Only attempt this stretch once you're comfortable with the first two variations. This is slightly more aggressive and may not be suitable for everyone. So just to recap, the two things that really worked for me with my recovery process were the two exercises, the inversion technique and the inverted hyperextension or the gyroids method, along with my recovery process in which I used the magnetic field stones, natural amethyst, and variable frequency pulsator, all in a belt form. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, definitely leave some comments. If you need to, you can ask me anything, I'll try and help. And if you are interested in future videos, I'll be uploading some material. If you are interested, definitely subscribe so that you can get to see some of that content. All right, for now, goodbye.